Hello, Lightning Maker crew. This is David, and today we're going to talk about how to start designing the next part of our park. We started with playgrounds because playgrounds are really fun and playgrounds are great for kids, but now it's time for us to think about the needs of people other than little kids, the needs of families, the needs of old people. And I wanted to talk about how we create more modern parks. So we talked about parks like Central Park from back in the day, the 1800s, the 1900s, and how the whole idea of a public park was born. Today, I want to talk about modern parks and how we design them. So, I want to start by talking about where I'm from, Boston. In Boston, like many cities, in the middle of the 20th century, after World War II, it wasn't doing as well as it had been. It was in a little bit of a decline because we were losing factories and industry and the ports where ships would come in and go out. And so this decline brought with it crime and poverty and rich people kind of leaving the city. So we had a place in Boston called Scully Square, which you can see here. It was really beautiful and interesting, but it had gotten a little ratty. And what Boston did is we bulldozed the whole thing and we replaced it with a park that most people think is pretty bad. And I thought it would be cool to look at a bad park to sort of learn about what makes it not that good. So this is City Hall Plaza, and I think if you look at it, you can kind of see what's wrong. There's nothing really interesting to do here, so you can see there aren't that many people. Very little nature. It's very cold. The wind blows through because there's nothing to stop the wind, and there's no reason to stop when you're walking through it. You never see a bench or a nice inviting place to relax or a piece of art to look at or something to do. So people realized that when we were trying to take these cities that were industrial and changing and declining, that just bulldozing everything kind of isn't that great and it doesn't feel that good. So what people started to do was they thought, how can we take these industrial spaces and turn them into something that's actually beautiful and interesting, but keeps our history? So in New York, we had something called the High Line, which runs through the west side of Lower Manhattan, sort of near Portfolio in the neighborhood of Chelsea, where all the art galleries are now. And it was a meatpacking district and an industrial area where they made garments and clothing. And this train was just for moving freight, not for people, just for like stuff from factories. And when all the factories shut down, we didn't really need this train anymore. And this train track went into disuse and it was sort of messed up and ugly. And people had the idea, it was very hard to do because people thought this was a weird idea of turning it into a park called the High Line, filling it with plants and letting people walk around there. So it took a long time to get this idea to happen, but what people realized is well, everybody loved it. Everyone who visits New York now knows they have to come check it out. And all the businesses that were close to the High Line started getting lots and lots of money because of all the people who had come there. So in my neighborhood, Williamsburg, we had a similar issue, which is the Domino Sugar Factory. Williamsburg was famous for making sugar, and as all the factories left New York, people thought what to do with this big, ugly factory. And it sat there for many years. I used to drive by it every day. And so they created something called Domino Park. And again, they're trying to keep all these industrial factory parts while making it an awesome park. You can still see that they left the main factory building and they left these cranes, but they added all of this fun stuff for people to do. And they even built this playground designed to kind of look like a factory and in the same colors as the cranes to match them. This is Freshkills Park, which is going to be in Staten Island, and it's being built right now. And when it's done, it's going to be 3 times the size of Central Park, so enormous, one of the biggest city parks in the world. And what it's actually made out of is a landfill. So when we throw away things that aren't recyclable, and New York City generates so much trash, it has to go somewhere. And what usually happens is they put it in a hole in the ground, and you can end up with what's called a landfill. And sometimes the landfills create huge hills because the trash builds up and up and up and makes a big hill. So there's opportunities to create beautiful parks in spaces we wouldn't normally think about, spaces that we might think of as being ugly or gross or abandoned. As the industry moves out of our city in New York City and we become a city that's more about office jobs and computer-based jobs and creative jobs, all these factory spaces, all these industrial spaces can be really beautiful. So your assignment for today is to start to develop a park. And your starting point is you're going to imagine that you have an abandoned industrial space. And you could choose which one you want. You could choose an abandoned train yard, train tracks, trains, maybe train station building. Those are kind of cool looking. An abandoned factory. Could be any factory you want. And abandoned factories can be really huge and have fascinating indoor spaces. You could use a natural pond, just a pond that's already there, but you could change the shape of it. You could use a landfill hill, or you could use an abandoned port, a place where there used to be docks and cranes, like we had a lot of in New York City, to receive goods coming in from ships or to put things onto ships. And you can decide what your park is for. Some options are it could be a space for sports. It could be a place for eating, grilling, and picnicking. It could be a place for just walking on paths. It could be a garden. It could be a place for exercising pets. A lot of parks have places for both big dogs and small dogs that are separated. Or you could create a place for a performance, like we have awesome concerts and plays in Central Park and in the parks in Williamsburg. So you could create stages and seating. What I'd like you to do is make a sketch of your idea. Try to develop it as much as you can. Start with the abandoned part and then try to just choose a focus, right? You could have a park that's kind of a little bit for everything, or you could have a park that's just for one of these things. Draw it really well, put your name on it, write a little bit of a description of your drawing, and post your drawing to Seesaw where I can see it.